Now, I never believed in this opening until I saw Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura playing this against other strong super GMs, or the so-called wayward queen attack. Imagine beating your higher rated opponents in just 4 moves with the scholar's mate. Surprisingly enough, I checked the Lichess database and discovered that there are many strong players, 2600s, 2700s, who are still losing in this way. E.g., after e4 and pawn to e5, instead of going queen h5 right away, some tricksters are beginning with bishop c4, directly eyeing the weak f7 pawn, so that when black plays knight c6, expecting white to play knight f3 next, after removing knight f6, white players here like playing queen h5, which is just a psychological move played especially in bullet chess, because by this time the computer will automatically play knight f6 following the pre-move command by the player, after which white mates on f7 with ease. And if you think I'm joking, take a look at these top games that have ended in the same way. And here we are talking about the 2600s, 2300s, 2400s. So this is not an opening to underestimate. But before I show you how to avoid the scholar's mate, let me show you how Magnus Carlsen plays this wayward queen attack with white pieces against super GMs. So this game was played in the year 2020. Magnus was playing against Perez L, a 2763 super GM. So Magnus started with pawn to e4. e5 was played by black, and then Magnus surprised his opponent with a move queen h5 right away. Now, for the sake of beginners, let me tell you what is happening here. This queen to h5 directly attacks the pawn on e5. For example, if black carelessly plays pawn to g6, thinking he is attacking the queen, that fails due to queen takes on e5 check, plus eyeballing the free rook on h8. So that's one way the game can end very quickly with the wayward queen attack, which is again why you as black need to defend this pawn with your knight. For example, knight c6 is what even Carlsen's opponent played in this game, simply defending the e5 pawn. And here Magnus continued with bishop c4 as if he wants to checkmate on f7, and this is when Perez played the move that I want you guys to be playing, pawn to g6. Yes, this is the whole remedy against the so-called scholar's mate. This time, note that white cannot take on e5 because this pawn is defended, which is why Magnus here played queen f3. Now you may ask, what did Magnus achieve in this position? Well, he just forced his opponent to create some dark square weaknesses, as you can see by the highlighted circles. I mean, this is the whole idea. That's why I wouldn't say the wayward queen attack is a very terrible opening, even though it's not what I would recommend for most beginner level players and intermediate level players to be playing. So from here, Perez L simply played knight to f6, which is the correct move. By the way, I should mention that bishop g7 in an effort to fianchetto your bishop is a big blunder because of the same simple checkmate on f7. And again, remember that this queen is supported by the bishop on c4 and black's king cannot go anywhere. So that's why I said never underestimate the power of the scholar's mate. You just need to be patient and play knight f6. Remember, knights should go first before the bishops. Now in this position, after knight f6, it is white who is supposed to be careful, as black can play this sneaky move knight d4 if white doesn't do anything to stop that. Which is why in this position, most white players like playing knight ge2 or pawn to c3, simply stopping knight d4 by black. And here that's what Magnus played, knight e2, stopping knight d4 by black. And after this, Perez L just fianchettoed his bishop, because that was the whole idea of arranging his pawns in this manner. So pawn to d3 is what was played in the Magnus game. And here there are 2 moves that are mostly played, castle shot and pawn to d6. To be honest, both of these moves are okay, but in this video we are going to focus on pawn to d6, which is what Perez L played in this game, by the way. Now pawn to d6 forces white to play pawn to h3, since black intends to play bishop g4 in the near future. And by the way, pawn to h3 is what Magnus played. Simply castle short, and the opening stage is almost complete. You're just remaining with developing the light squared bishop and developing the queen to make sure that your rooks are connected. That's how you know that the opening stage is complete. And in most cases, if you don't know what to do in the middle game, I recommend that you just start by getting rid of white's most active piece, which is the bishop on c4. Just making sure that there is nothing that is pinning our pawn on f7. If white plays a normal looking move, knight bc3, here we can even play bishop e6 if we want, intending to exchange bishops. For example, knight bc3, bishop e6. This is simple enough for beginner level players and intermediate level players. Well, if white takes the bishop, we take back with a pawn, and this knight will never come on d5, which is one of our main goals. But if white becomes stingy enough and plays something like knight d5, he doesn't want you to exchange bishops. Well, here just take that poor knight with a bishop. If pawn takes, that would be a bad move by white, as it is only going to block the vision of his light squared bishop, which is why you're going to see them taking with a bishop. And that's how you take the bishop with your knight. Pawn takes, and then you simply play knight b4, and there's nothing that white can really do to defend his c2 pawn apart from playing king d1. And please note that at worst, this knight can go back to s6, so you'll be good to go from here. So that was just after knight bc3, which you're going to see some of your opponents playing anyways. So just remember this position, and you won't have any problems to do with the scholar's mate or the so-called wayward attack. Now, before I go any further, don't just watch this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel, because that encourages me to keep on making more wonderful videos. Trust me guys, I haven't even started. There's a lot more wonderful content that I have for you guys. And again, don't feel lazy to leave your comments in the comment section down below. I read all of them and I respond to some of the comments that require immediate attention. And before I forget, the link for my new website is in the description down below, where you can purchase all my courses at very affordable prices. There we are talking of an average of 20 USD. That's unbelievably low, but just to help you improve your chess and save you time from losing lots of games. Okay, let's get back to the video. Now, one of the most challenging moves is bishop g5, which you are going to see 90% of your opponents playing, simply pinning your king's knight to the queen on d8. Now, let me say something here. Whenever you see this bishop coming to g5, you should immediately play pawn to h6 with the idea of starting your kingside pawn storm right away, because we don't want this knight bishop combo to happen right in this position. So just simply play pawn to h6. That's another brilliant move in this particular opening. And here, if bishop takes the knight, well, then that will just lead to a normal game, which is why when you check the Lichess database, bishop h4 is what they always play. And from here, another key move that I want you to remember is play pawn to g5, pawn storming right away. Oh, Casper, one of the opening principles says, don't move your pawns in front of your kings, because that just weakens your king side. Yes, I know about that, but there's also another opening principle which says, when your opponent's opening is poor, look for tactics and combinations. And this is what we are doing right away. Not to mention that there is no real way for white to checkmate us or to take advantage of our weaknesses. And we also have this big pawn right here. Anyways, bishop g3 is what you're going to see them playing. Now hold on, this position looks like we are done with our play. There's nothing to attack immediately, and this is where you need to start looking for your opponent's most active pieces in the middle game. Again, remember what I said. White's most active piece in this position is the bishop on c4. So if you want, this is the piece you can start attacking right away. There are quite a number of moves to play. Bishop e6, knight a5, but in this position, I want to show you how masters continue. So the key square in the middle game is the d5 square before white plays knight bc3. So right away, I recommend that you go pawn to d5. Oh, is this not just a free pawn? At the moment it is, but after e takes d5, we have an in-between move. Now you are learning new terms. Pawn to g4, attacking the queen, so white doesn't have time to take our knight on c6, since his bigger piece, the queen, is under attack. So h takes g4 is forced, after which you should take with a bishop. White plays queen e3 only move, and here, even though you can take the pawn on d5 with your knight, I suggest that you become creative. You know, chess requires creativity. You need to be very creative if you want to be a very good player. There's nothing wrong with knight takes d5 except that it is just a too obvious move. So here I would play something like knight d4 with an intention of capturing on c2, because that would fork the queen, the rook, and the king. Not to mention that we are also attacking the knight on e2 together with the bishop. So knight takes on d4 is forced, e takes d4, and please note that the best that white can do in this position is to go back, because queen takes d4 runs straight into the eyes of our dark squared bishop. For example, here we can even play another in-between move, a rook e8, by the way, which was not the only thing to play. So the king goes to f1, then we play bishop e2, first of all securing our bishop, and after king g1, now that our bishop will not hang, this is when we play knight h5. Please note that if this bishop was on g4, the queen would have captured it. That's why we played rook e8 check first, and then bishop e2 check to create this move sequence that you're seeing right now. So here, as you can see, we are attacking two things, the bishop and the queen. Oh, not just two things, we are also attacking the pawn on b2 and the rook on a1 indirectly. So if queen h4 the only sensible move, there we take the queen, and after rook takes on h4, bishop takes on b2, the next move white will lose his rook on a1 for free, and that's how you can easily punish the wayward queen attack. So clearly we can see that white doesn't have to take on d4. Going a few moves backwards, remember that we just played bishop g4 attacking the queen, and then white played queen e3, and it is in this position where I said even though we can take on d5, try to be more creative and play something like knight d4 attacking the pawn on c2, and after knight takes on d4, e takes d4, white doesn't have to take on d4 with his queen. The best he can do is to go back, and let's say if he plays queen d2, which is a more logical move. I want to show you a game that I played against a very tricky opponent that I just met at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. In this game, I was playing black pieces. After my opponent played queen back to d2, I noticed that the queen had some squares to go to in case of any trouble, queen c1 or queen f4. So I wanted to take away this square from the queen as well, but before doing that, I decided to play this sneaky move, pawn to b5, just sacrificing my pawn immediately. Well, if the bishop takes on b5, I was going to play queen takes on d5, attacking the bishop and at the same time eyeing the weak g2 pawn. But my opponent was clever enough and played bishop b3, and here, since I wanted to take away the f4 square from the queen, I simply played knight h5, stopping the possible queen f4 in the near future and also eyeing the weak dark squared bishop on g3. I also had other ideas of playing rook e8 check, and so my opponents here just played bishop h2. He didn't want me to double up his pawns, and then I played rook e8 check. The idea was that after king f1, I was thinking of planting my rook on e2, which I did. And as you can see, queen f4 is not possible because of the move that I played, knight h5. And that's why my opponent was only left with c1, that's what he played. And then look at the ending now, queen h4, intending to checkmate on f2 right away. My opponent played pawn to g3, stopping the checkmate. And here I played queen h3 check. Please note that the king cannot capture the rook because it is being defended by my bishop. So my opponent played king g1, and then I played bishop f3. There is a checkmate coming on g2, which is why my opponent played queen f1, stopping the checkmate. And here I played the move that made all the girls that were present at that time who were watching this game to fall in love with me and thought I was a genius. I give you 3 seconds to find that move in order to end the game in style. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I hope you found this move. Rook e1. White's queen cannot take my queen here because it is pinned by my rook to the king. After seeing this, my opponent just left the board. He didn't even press the clock because this was checkmate. After queen takes, queen g2 checkmate. Now, true, I thought I was a genius. I thought I was smart. But after this beautiful victory, I lost a couple of games and everyone started laughing at me. Anyways, let's move on. So again, after e4, e5, queen h5 by white, attacking the pawn on e5, we defend the pawn knight c6, bishop c4 intending to checkmate on f7, pawn to g6 playing in the fianchetto style, queen f3, knight f6, developing the knights first before the bishops. Here, instead of knight e2, you will see most of your opponents again playing pawn to c3, which stops your knight d4 ideas. But here again, you just continue normally. Bishop g7, intending to castle short. d3 by white. I mean, you don't have to memorize anything here. You can play knight f5 going after this light squared bishop. But again, keeping everything in the same spirit, just go pawn to d6, opening up the way for the bishop. And if h3 is stopping bishop g4, just castle short. Again, you already know what to do. If bishop g5 by white, you just start pawn storming on the king side and you are safe, combining with the d5 ideas and pawn to g4 later on. If pawn takes, you take with the bishop, attacking the queen. And after pawn to d5, pawn takes, you take with your knight. Life goes on. But if white plays knight e2, intending to castle short, I just told you there's plenty of options that you can take. Just play bishop e6, challenging the light squared bishop, or knight f5, getting rid of this light squared bishop right away. For example, knight f5, if bishop b5, he doesn't want you to take the bishop, play pawn to c6, bishop f4, b5. At the end of the day, it is you who is getting ahead of development. Your pawns are well advanced, unlike white's pawns. So bishop c2 again, pawn to c5. Anyway, so that's just about all the stuffs you need to know in the wayward queen attack, precisely how to avoid the scholar's mate, which is mostly played by tricksters and those who want to end the game quickly.